Liberal conservative debate and socialism rate. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDIA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is November 14th, 2021. And on this date in history, in 1991, there was a fire at Burleson High School. I was supposed to be taking semester finals, but they were pushed back 3 days. Oh. And then so was graduation. Thanks a lot. Stupid. Latin American revolts. So we talked about the American Revolution, we talked about the French Revolution, and the only reason we're talking about Latin American revolts is because they are directly influenced by Spain, which oddly enough is part of Europe, which is part of European history. So you have a group of Spaniards over here who will intermarry with other Spaniards, with some of the indigenous people, and with some of the former slaves. And, well, anyway, so you have a lot of people of European descent in Latin America. Okay? Now, let's talk about really one of the most important people to independence movements in South America, and that is Simone Bolivar. He's from Venezuela, and one of the things, he's known as the George Washington of Latin America. He has ties to Europe. He was actually there and watched Napoleon crown himself the Emperor of France. And what he's going to do that's important is he's going to liberate a lot of northern South America. And this will include Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So basically all of northwest South America is freed by the efforts of a lot of people, but under Simone Bolivar. Now, Jose de San Martin, he trained in Spain for 22 years before he came back and ended up liberating Argentina and Chile. And this actually happens in the Battle of Chacabuco in Brazil. Okay, and other Latin American countries were liberated around the same time. Spain's attention was just about everywhere, and really between 1820 and 1824, they lose all of their territories over in the New World, with the exception of Cuba and Puerto Rico. So they go from being one of the most powerful empires in the world to, well, nothing. And by 1898, they'll lose all of their territory outside of Spain. So the Congress of Vienna of 1822, we've already talked about what they did in the first steps of that, and this is a little bit further. So no one really wants to do the hard work of maintaining the peace in Europe. So the great powers let a French army stop a Spanish revolution. Okay, now Britain looks over to what's going on during all of the revolutions in Spanish territories, and they're really against what was going on in the Americas, and they thought that it would hurt their trade. And about this time, that the U.S. is going to issue the Monroe Doctrine, and this bans all European intervention. Okay, so really the United States has no way to enforce this in any way whatsoever. And the biggest problem, in Europe is just everyone's tired. Everyone's tired of fighting. You have the French Revolution start in 1789, and there's unrest in France going to 1815. Europe, or Great Britain, fights against Napoleon. They fight against the United States. Just no one really wants to fight at this point, and so it's not that everyone accepts the Monroe Doctrine, they just don't decide to challenge it. So the fallout of all this that happens here is you've got 30 years of revolution that start in 1848, but you have no major wars until 1914. So 1848 is a major year of revolution, so is 1830, and then you have the wars, or at least the small conflicts that lead to German and Italian unifications. Okay, in Britain you have the conservatives, also known as the Tories, and they're keeping out radicalism with censorship. So they prevent anyone from doing anything, and if they catch anyone doing something, they will actually try and stomp that out. Okay, the Corn Laws protect British grain from competition with tariffs, but raise prices. Okay, so if you needed grain, you could only buy them within Great Britain, and they could charge whatever prices they wanted to because you can get them at a lower rate. And this is going to lead to a problem inside of Britain. So the Peterloo Massacre, what happens is 60,000 people gather in a field in Manchester, England, and they're there to protest these corn laws. But there's a total of 11 people that are killed, and hundreds of people are wounded through this whenever the Her Majesty's army goes and, stomps anyone who's unhappy about what's going on. So, in Germany, the Burschenschaffen, you have students and professors who were celebrating German culture. Okay, they wanted to have a united Germany, bring all of these different German provinces together into one, so that all German speakers could enjoy living in a single country. Okay, and they burned a lot of conservative books on Luther's 300th anniversary. Okay, so everything's good, right? You can burn whatever you want to. Well, the Carlsbad decrees, this dissolves the Burschenschaffen. They censor the press, and the government's going to supervise universities. They don't want what happened in France to move on to Germany, so they're going to prevent the revolutions that went that way. Okay, and you can't blame people in Germany for wanting to prevent the chaos that was going on in Europe at the time.
1127, bus 33, you'll ride 66, 3366.
Sorry about that just a minute ago. There's a reason you don't record these in your classroom. So let's talk about the Decembrist Society in Russia. Okay, these are army officers who are pushing for a constitutional government. So these are people within the military who do have influence over some of the soldiers that are there. The Decembrist The Decembrist revolt pushed for the liberal brother Constantine to take the throne. Nicholas I, who was the Tsar, crushed the revolution, and he ruled as autocracy, orthodoxy, and nationality. Okay, so basically he was going to rule by himself. He was going to be orthodox in religion, and he was going to do this for all Russians. I think I've mentioned before that really, if we're talking and trying to define a people, the things that really tie Russians together is vodka and the Orthodox religion, okay, which is an offshoot of Catholicism, okay, from around the year 1000. So they're a little bit different from Catholicism, but not massively different, okay. Nicholas I would use the secret police to keep the peace. He believed in religious uniformity, so if you're looking for freedom of religion, you don't want to go to 19th century Russia. Okay, thought that everyone should speak the Russian language, and the culture of minority groups would be just completely wiped out. And this would be done by the secret police. And this is going to lead to the pogroms that force the Jews out of Russia within the next 80 years. Now, conservatism of the time, it didn't reject change, and human nature was really driven by passion. So this is what it meant to be a conservative. Okay, so Edmund Burke, he was English, and he believed in change through adaptation. Okay, that humans use reason for self-interest, and custom and traditions meet particular needs. He was someone who supported the American Revolution. Now, you realize that everyone will justify in their mind what they do so that they feel like things are right. And, most people don't go to bed thinking that they're a horrible person. Most people, find a way to look at the events of the day and think to themselves, you know what, I did pretty good today, okay? Now, there are people that don't, but for the most part, people can always justify what they do in their mind. Joseph de Maistre, he was French, and he said that the reason that there was violent chaos, it's because people had left the church, the monarchy, and the nobility. And it's basically absolute monarchs that answer to no one. They're the only people who could guarantee any type of order in society. And basically the world is a better place with a strong church, a strong monarchy, and a strong nobility, because they know how to take care of the masses, and the normal people don't know anything. Okay, liberalism. Okay, so the opposite side of the coin from conservatism is liberalism, and things that they wanted, and most of the time liberalism is a push for change. Okay, so first you have equality before the law. Okay, so that basically all people have equal rights before the law. What a crazy thing. I can understand why people would be so against that. The right to assemble, the right to free speech, the right to press, and the right to no arbitrary arrest. Okay, so basically what liberalism was for were most of the tenets of the Bill of Rights in the United States. Okay, laissez-faire principles of Adam Smith's capitalism. So laissez-faire is speaking about basically the no government interference with business. Okay, you have protection of private property. Okay, and there's a social contract with government that basically the government is there to take care of you, and if the government doesn't take care of you, you have the right to overthrow them. Okay, you're also looking at religious toleration and individual rights. So a lot of the things that are embraced here by liberalism are really all from the first 10 amendments. Well, at least I guess the first 8. Okay, but a lot of the basic tenets of the U.S. Constitution. Now, Jeremy Bentham, he was British. He was a utilitarian. He believed the greatest good for the greatest number of people was the way that you should run things. The separation of church and state, and women's rights, and the end of slavery. So, again, he was someone whose views kind of went against everything that was held by most of the controlling class. John Stuart Mill. He writes on liberty in 1859, and he defends things like freedom of expression, and also talks about the dangers of the tyranny of the majority. Okay, and that is a big fear, especially among conservatives, because in general the majority will be more likely to knee jerk. There'll be someone who call for war today, and then tomorrow ask why we're at war. Okay, and so this is something that really concerns leadership whenever you have the potential of, you can't go with making the majority happy. You have to do what's best for the majority, but not what makes them happy necessarily, if that makes any sense. Louis Blanc, he has national workshops for the working poor, and this is going to lead to yet another revolution in France. Okay. France for nearly 100 years is revolution on, revolution off, kind of red light, green light, red light, green light. Okay. Anyway, so his attempt to try and help the working poor leads to a revolution. Socialism. Okay. You hear a lot about socialism here because people are terrified of it. Okay. But the truth is, it's an economic theory where production, distribution, and exchange are all regulated by the community or the government. Okay, so major industries might be controlled by the government or by the community, and they distribute it as they find appropriate. Okay, now utopian socialism. This is something where there's no such thing anymore as private property, and in this type of society, the reason that the wealthy would peacefully give everything over, but through conversation. So basically, they convince the rich to give up all their wealth to make the society a better place. Okay, Charles Fourier, he believed in something called voluntary cooperation and shared property. Okay, he thought that you could basically get a bunch of people, get about 1,620 people together, put them in a community. They wouldn't have to do the same job all the time. They could change what they're doing. They'd live in a phalanastry, and they would rotate tasks. And if you could just create the society, it would be self-sustaining, and everything would go well. And but the problem was he couldn't get financing. So people trying to create utopias and perfect societies. Robert Owen, okay, he was one of the first socialists. He built a factory in New Lanark, Scotland, and he tried to take care of his workers. He gave them high wages. He tried to give them better conditions in the workplace, tried to educate their children, and he will actually try to export this type of idea to the U.S., and he attempts this in Indiana, but it's ultimately going to fail. Okay, Flora Tristan, she has what's called the Workers' Union, and it's a book she writes, and she writes about the oppression of women as factory or housemakers is because of unequal property ownership. Okay, so the fact that the nobility owns so much property, that women own so little property, that women don't have any type of opportunity to do anything other than work in a factory or be a homemaker. Okay, now those of you who are reading that thinking, wow, look at how well he termed that, the unequal property ownership of property. I had the opportunity to change it, and be honest, while going over this, I have the opportunity to change it, but it amuses me, so I'm going to leave it as such. So, anyway, oh, happy day, have a great day. Feminism. This is a group of women working together to improve access to education, along with legal rights, property rights, and political rights. Educating women was not a high priority worldwide, and in all honesty, my grandmother, who was born in 1917, she only went to school to the 8th grade because her dad said, "You're just a girl, you don't need more education than this." Okay, so that's why my grandmother had an 8th grade education. Now, she would marry a man with an 8th grade education, but he had an 8th grade education because he had to start working full time. His dad, my grandfather's dad, so my great-grandfather died when he was only 12 years old. So at that point, his older brother inherited everything, including the house, and then kicked out my grandfather and my great-grandmother. So he made them homeless, and they ended up finding a place down the street where someone took mercy on them and let them live in their chicken coop. So anyway, I was talking about access to education, and I moved to my grandfather living in a chicken coop. Don't give me the keys to the bomb. Okay, Henri de Saint-Simon. Okay, he founds Christian socialism, and this is going to combine the ideas of socialist utopianism with Christian values and scientific thought. Okay, in this type of world, men and women would share housekeeping and rearing children. Basically, everyone should work. Okay, I guess this makes me a disciple of Henri de Saint-Simon. because my wife and I do help. We both do the housekeeping together, and we both rear our children together. Rear and raise. Most of you have been taught the incorrect term for that, but you rear children, you raise animals. Anyway, Zoe Gatti de Gamond, she created a phalanastry, and this provided men and women with the same education and job opportunities. Basically, it was an attempt to create a utopian society. It doesn't go real well, okay? Again, trying to throw together things like that, it takes a while for those things to happen organically. You can't force them to go. You can try, but it works a lot better if people arrive there on their own. Okay, so nationalism, this is something that really starts to break out during this time period, okay? It's this idea of a shared tradition of culture, language, community. It's something that's born in the U.S. following the War of 1812, where people are really proud to be of that culture, of that, it's a patriotism for one's people, okay? You're going to see an explosion of this. So let's look in Germany for just a minute. You've got Johann Gottfried Herder, okay? And he gets rid of the concept of state and goes with Volkgeist, or spirit of the people. They start to celebrate everything that is really German, okay? Beethoven, the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. And eventually what's going to become really a key thing for getting them together is the music of Wagner, okay? And, it's just something that separates German people from other people, okay? George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, okay? He glorifies the national state as a march of destiny through history, and basically Germany's role in becoming the leader of the world, okay? So these are definitely people that are really into nationalism and trying to make their nation great. Again, no, I'm not going to do that. Make their nation great. Okay, Italian, Giuseppe Mazzini. Okay, he joined a group called the Carbonari, and they wanted to expel the Habsburgs from Italy. Okay, the Habsburgs were really from Austria, so he wanted to get them out. He's really pushing for Italian nationalism, and he thought the big problem in Europe was the concert of Europe, and he thought that overthrowing the concert of Europe would lead to a free, independent states, and there you would have more nationalism come out because of linguistic and ethnic identity similarities. Okay, Pan-Slavism. Okay, this is really on the peninsula of Greece, and a little bit farther north of there. You have Poles, Serbs, Croats, Czechs, and Slovaks, and they look to have a common linguistic and cultural traditions, and they wanted to unite all of the Slavs. Now the problem was, whenever they were creating their own nation, they would need protection from someone, and they looked to Russia for that. And it was a safe time now to do that, but it's not something that would be the case in the future. So we've reached the end of today. I hope everyone's having a great day. I'd like to see more people in class and more people part of discussions, so we can move on from here. There's some skills we need to work on. In the meantime, everyone be safe. Don't cocaine, don't AIDS, and please don't COVID. I'll see all of you on the other side. Have a safe night.